Welcome back to the show, friends. My guest today is an NFPT master fitness trainer, a rowing coach, a champion competitor in his own right, and an award-winning adjunct professor. He's also the founder of Well Past 40, a company dedicated to promoting wellness and longevity. You think that's enough? Nope, it's not. He also acts as a volunteer coach for veterans in both the Wounded Warrior and Freedom Rose Project. You know, I could sit here and I could go on and on about this man's accolades and all of the things he does, and it would probably take up the whole episode, and I don't want to do that. So please help me in welcoming David Frost. David, my friend, welcome to the Jacked Up podcast. We finally did it. No more tech issues. We are doing this episode. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Living the dream, John. Thanks very much.
Man, I'm going to tell you what, you have done so many things in your life, and I'm really interested in the work that you do with people that have diabetes and things of that nature, not to mention the volunteer coaching that you do. I don't want to give away all your story. I want you to tell your story, but it's just all these different things that you've done in your life have made you someone that I really wanted to sit down and have this conversation with. So I want to thank you for taking your time out of your schedule to do that. I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate the chance to chat for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so now with all that being said, why don't you tell our audience, take us back to, because I know you had a decorated career in the Navy, why don't you take us back to that and how you kind of transitioned from all that stuff back then to what you're doing now?
All righty. Well, we'll try to do the abridged version, not the unabridged version, because I have been around a few blocks a few times. But as you mentioned, I was lucky enough to serve in America's Navy. I was aboard gray ships. Haze gray and underway was what we used to say. Great responsibility. My kids still joke, John, that they tend to say I'm not the cleanest gen on the planet for cleanliness, but I used to handle part of our nation's nuclear stockpile, and I never lost any weapons. So I hold that to my kids when they say, Dad, you ought to pick up after yourself. I say, I never lost any nuclear weapons. But after my combined active and reserve naval career, I went into industry. I learned a lot about acoustics and tried to continue my conviction that treat your body like a temple. So as I could, it was 22 laps to the mile on board the ship. We had a very small flight deck, so it was 22 laps to the mile. And if you didn't remember to reverse course halfway through, your inboard knee would kind of bother you. But it was kind of fun to jog when Russian Badgers were flying overhead and you're north of the Arctic Circle, that kind of thing. So Uncle Sam said, hey, actually, Bill Clinton signed my papers that said I can go on, proceed on duties assigned, and get on with the rest of your life. So I entered industry, and I did work in the defense and aerospace industry for a long time, but started to volunteer, and first started with Big Brothers, big blood donor. You know, I'm O positive. I'm not a universal donor, but I'm got big veins, and the blood bank loved to see me, so I was a big blood donor. And I got involved after Big Brothers with rowing, nonprofit rowing, and gosh, too many of our amazing men and women went overseas and wearing the fabric of our country and got banged up. The VA and U.S. Rowing said, you know, rowing, because of the nature of the sport, is very, very good for brain injured, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, closed cycle type of thing. Why don't we have some clubs set up to support our wounded warriors, what we used to call, now we call it Freedom Rose. But we were so blessed that the equipment now supports amputees, spinal injured, but an awful lot of people that had trauma in just experiences they had that I'd never want to have. So if we can get them a kind of a Zen-like experience on the water, they say great things about it. So I've been honored to do that for many years, and it just makes you feel good when an amputee, one gent, Justin was his first name, I won't give his full name, he high amputee from a rocket in Fallujah, and he was a big, strong kid, and he loved to row. And and now not only he's still very active, but he is helping design better prosthetics for our amazing heroes. Right. So in line with working with as many veterans as we can, San Diego, where I live now, blessed to live in San Diego, not in the mountains of where you are, but I'm a Green Mountain guy by birth. I'm a Vermonter by birth, so we can talk mountains sometimes. But I realized that San Diego is a very diverse community, and many of its underserved kids really are not comfortable around the water, and they're not really don't understand crew or rowing as a sport, other than they think it's only for rich kids. If they saw one of the movies on TV that, it just seems to be, an Ivy League sport, so to speak. So we're trying to dispel that. And 8 years ago, we set up a club called Community Rowing of San Diego to try to serve the kids that are not affluent, that are not comfortable with the water, and help them build their self-confidence, their perseverance, realizing teamwork is really a big deal. So, that kind of makes my day when you can help other people. So that's some of what I do when I'm not doing gigs, to tell people to join the movement and to live longer and live better.
Yeah, that's the thing. We are living longer nowadays. The life expectancy has grown dramatically over the last 20, 30 years alone. And a lot of that has to do with the advances in medical science. But I think some of it has to do with the fact that people are starting to wake up. They're starting to realize that there's power in the food that they're putting in their body. And the more that they realize that, and the more they realize how some of the negative stuff they're putting in their body versus the positive stuff, they can see how that has a direct correlation with how they feel, how they perform, and things of that nature. Now, obviously, rowing is huge for you, and I totally get that. Now, you actually got certified through an organization as a master trainer. Is that correct?
That is correct. About 7 years ago, John, there are a number of amazing credentialing organizations for personal trainers. I found, for me, after trying a couple ones, that the National Federation of Professional Trainers was just ideal for my continuing education and the support for me to do my job to help other people on their journeys to fitness and wellness. So NFPT, a nice four-letter acronym, National Federation of Professional Trainers. Great outfit. There are many. There's ACE, there's NASM, American College of Sports Medicine. But I found my home and did, with my continuing education, did become a master fitness trainer. As you shared, I have worked a lot with parts of our demographic that are dinged up from either physical or medical problems. But, rarely, with your mention of living longer and our allusion to living better, I have not found a study. There may be one. I have not found a study where exercise was counterindicated for livelihood. If you can get up from a chair, if you can breathe, you're an athlete. The guy that invented the Nike waffle trainer said that if you can breathe, you're an athlete. So let's all think of ourselves as athletes. And like you said, let's think about what we ingest. We all know, the way to great abs is through the refrigerator door more than the workouts that we do. And I have this: if it doesn't spoil, you probably shouldn't be eating it. If it's on a shelf in a package with preservatives, don't do that.
Yep. I tell people all the time, the clients that I work with, if you pick something up and you look at the nutrition label and it's got more than 5 ingredients, put it back down. Because odds are you don't need to eat it, for sure. But when you think about the direct correlation with how we treat our body with the fuel that we put in it, and things developing like type 2 diabetes and other metabolic syndromes, all these things come from the way we treat our body. Either the lack of exercise, improper food balance, your hormones, your vitamins, all these stuff. The body is so complex, and people just don't understand that all of the pieces of the puzzle have to be there. And it's not just a matter of jumping on the next new shiny diet that some celebrity's promoting or something like that. That's not going to achieve your quality life, and optimum health. It takes having a little bit of knowledge. And if you don't have that knowledge, work with someone who does. And, figure out what's going to work best for you, because what works best for you is going to be sustainable.
Oh, great point. And I joke that everyone is an athlete, but I also argue, and we'll go to my grave saying, that every athlete, each one of us, is different. Like you said, there's some of us that have some hormones that are not working in their favor. Whether it's the fat hormones, or you have a gene that you're predisposed to send sugar to fat instead of to work your muscles. So many times it's not our fault, and yet motion is medicine. It sounds so simple, but simple yet hard. Motion is medicine. Yeah. And we just got to get people moving. You mentioned our diets, and yes, we're eating more. I read a study which I believe to be credible. Since 50 years ago to now, we eat an average American eats 500 kilocalories a day more than we did 50 years ago. That's a pound a week, and that's okay if we move and our energy equation says we're expending more than we're storing.
Right. Yes, exactly. That's the other part that people don't understand. There's a formula to it. There's a science. So many times I'll start working with a new client, and I'll give them my intake forms, and I ask them a ton of questions. I ask them all kinds of stuff. I ask them what their home life's like. Do they have a lot of stress at home? How do they deal with their stress? All these different things, because everything plays a part, right? So when most of my clients come to me because they're trying to lose body fat, they're trying to get their type 2 diabetes under control, things of that nature. And when they come to me and we sit down and I say, okay, well, this is how much I want you eating today. And it's typically a whole lot more than what they've been eating during the whole time where they've been trying to lose weight. And they're like, wait a minute. I'm trying to lose body fat and you're telling me to eat more food? Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. You have to understand things like adaptive thermogenesis and how your metabolism works and all these other things. And it's great when people like you and I can work with so many people to help them. That's why I got in this business. I want to help people. I want to help as many people as possible not have to go through what I went through when I was suffering from diabetes real bad and all that type of stuff. I want to make sure that people have the education and the resources that they need to where they can build sustainable, healthy lives all on their own.
Thank you. And there's 7 billion of us around, but in America, it would only has 350 million people, and you can break it down in any number of sub-sectors, but rarely we find folks that are saying, hey, let's go exercise instead of let's go exercise our thumbs on a video game.
Yes. Yes.
So it is just so extraordinary that the solutions are out there. The information is out there. You did allude to, though, there's an awful lot of crap. There's an awful lot of noise. The fountain of youth, the magic elixir. It's work. But I kind of think of it. Many of us, as our years grow, and I have a few more than you.
Oh yeah, I have a few. Not many though. I'm older than you think.
No, you've done well, and that's the idea. Is we want to have lower fitness or gym ages. I don't care what my calendar years are. I'm supposed to be in the really living large. If the first third of our life is learning, and the second part is launching our careers, the third part of our life, our encore performance, is supposed to be the happiness curve, the grandkids. Yes. We have more time on our hands to celebrate, someday to travel. But if we don't watch it, the joints get achy. We start to get some of those things that are autoimmune, like arthritis. And you mentioned it, diet and exercise. So, we're proponents of a very simple yet hard message in the presence of all this noise that we get online. Heck, every other commercial is some doctor saying, take this and your insulin sensitivity is going to get better. Well, why don't you try exercising or change the times when you eat your complex carbohydrates? It is so fascinating, and you and I love doing what we do because we do see results in people, and it does make a difference. Exactly. When they look in the mirror and they say, my face is leaner. Hey, I can bound up the steps 2 at a time. I have a joke in the intro to the book, John. You saw it. It's a knock knock. When we grew up, we had a lot of knock knock jokes. The knock knock goes something like this: knock knock, who's there? A baby boomer and a kaboomer. And the person says, a baby boomer and a kaboomer who, and I'd say a baby boomer who may take 2 pills at a time, and a kaboomer who tries to take steps 2 at a time. And that's a big difference. You know, I'll keep going back to motion is medicine. And we try to develop a physical portfolio. We're getting older. We're interested in not having our money die before we do. We're all going to die, right? That's part of living. Yeah. So we're all kind of conscious of retirement funds and whatnot. So I have this model. There's 7 S's in it where I argue that, and as you shared, it's the product, and everybody's product is different. Everybody's physical with a P, not fiscal with an F. Everybody's physical count is different. Your hormones, what you got from your parents, all that sort of thing. But if you combine strength, stability, stamina, stretching, clean sustenance, wonderful sleep, which of course is a great calorie burn. People forget how important 7 hours of sleep is to have a great metabolic rate where you flush out all the chemicals of your brain that's worked so hard for you. But about a quarter to a third of our calorie burn comes when we're sleeping. We're not sleeping, we're stressed, we're not building those happy hormones, and we're not losing weight. So
exactly. You know what? I actually have that slide that you sent me, David. Let me show that, and you can just kind of go through the points on there, so that way the audience can at least the audience that's watching the video can get an idea of what it is that you're saying.
Wonderful. So a lady named Wendy Suzuki talked about a physical 401k on a TED Talk, and I thanked her and I quoted her in my book. But I also quote Muddy Waters. Some of us remember that great musician, and you see the quote there in italics. You can't spend what you ain't got, effectively. So here's this bank, and this is physical, like, you know, with a P, not fiscal, like monetary. There's one huge takeaway over on that right-hand side. That dude, that thief, is stealing your livelihood. It's stealing your happy hormones. It's probably putting on weight. So we really want to counter stress. Stress not. It's hard to. It's easy to say, very hard to do. We know that these days, election years, COVID, stress is there. But you know, a guy named a wonderful scientist named Hans Selye said it's not stress that kills us. It's our reaction to it. And sleep's a big part of that. And in fact, sleep up at the top of the bank, it's the capstone. If we're not sleeping, restorative, deep sleep, REM for dreaming, we're not enabling these wonderful bodies of ours to do their best. We cannot underestimate the importance of currency in our exchange. And we've talked about it, but we can't hit people over the head hard enough to say how important. If you can afford clean, organic eating, farm to table, and not taking things processed or canned. Sometimes canning is okay, but fresh is always best. So clean eating cannot be overemphasized in your physical bank account. Down at the basement, the bedrock is our stamina for staying alive. Motion is medicine. The cornerstone, resistance training, pushing stuff, moving stuff, even if it's another person. That's quite okay. You know, prisoners do it, you know, love mates do it. Moving things is really important. There's no finer type of activity than we can do than stamina and strength exercises. A lot of folks, as we get older, sit too much. They don't stretch, so they don't have the flexible contributions to their physical 401k. And the alarming statistic for people my age, John, the Medicare age crowd, over age 65, one out of every 3 of us, that's 20 million Medicare age people, fall every year. And lots of times you fall, you break a hip, break a wrist. If you don't have the skeletal muscle to support your skeleton. So I call stability your accident insurance. So that's the physical bank account that we want people to really think about. And as you shared, spot on, it's the product of these things. And make sure that's stress, not stealing. So there's the product of 6 very positive things: strength, stability, stamina, stretching, sleeping, and clean eating, and watching that stress. We don't want too much cortisol unless a saber-toothed tiger is chasing you. So that's the physical bank account that if folks think about it, if they are a fit and well person with a gym year that's lower than their calendar year, it's because they're doing the product of those things. You know it, I know it. If we can get that message out, hopefully more people will live longer and live better.
Absolutely. You know, I quote this guy all the time because he wrote a book. His name is Aubrey Marcus, and the name of the book is Own the Day, Own Your Life. And there are so many pearls of wisdom in this book. But the one that I latched onto the most and I talk about all the time is where he talks about the best medicine in the world for improving the quality of your life. And it's absolutely free, and it's exercise. Yeah, it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you anything to go out and walk around the block. I live in the mountains. It doesn't cost me anything to go out here and chop wood to get ready for wintertime. It doesn't cost me anything, but yet it keeps me healthy. It keeps me moving. It keeps me leaner. All these different things because I'm not just sitting around. Now, I spend a lot of time here in my office and in my studio, anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a day. I spend working, sometimes, not all the time, because I do need to get sleep. But it's like I have to get up and move. If I sit for too long, I'll get to where I can do something else, and I'll stand up and sometimes I'll just do body weight squats while I'm sitting here reading an article or something like that. It's all, you're absolutely right. It's all about moving. And the older you get, the more important it is, for sure. But now,
Amen.
But now I want to touch on something that you touched on here just a minute ago, and it was definitely a topic that I wanted to talk to you about, and that is your book. And your book is titled KABOOMER. Why don't you explain to everybody why, first of all, why you wrote the book, why you titled that, and then what they can expect to find.
Thanks, John. So yeah, KABOOMER, thriving and striving into your 90s. And I'll joke that I'll ask you not to look at the Urban Dictionary definition of KABOOMER. Urban Dictionary gets a little far out there with the Queen's English, but President Obama actually used the term KABOOMER when he was in office running this country. He used the term, and it kind of implied action. It kind of implied doing a little bit extra. So extraness is kind of what I was looking for. And in this case, I'm looking for the investment, the work that you said, getting up from the chair, stretching your ankles, giving yourself a big bear hug, breathing mindfully. Those are the kinds of extraness things that can help you live longer and live better, even if you're a knowledge worker, recording things like you are so that other people can hear great messages. There's nothing wrong with getting up every 15 minutes and doing a great stretch or doing, like you said, a couple body weight squats or whatever. So KABOOMER, I've been blogging for quite a while, and as we shared, I've been a certified personal trainer, and before that, a rowing coach for many years. I decided that I've seen a thing or two, so I thought it might be time to share a thing or two. I had some colleagues who wrote their own books, and they said, Dave, you can spell, you know how to spell check. Why don't you try writing a book? And I said, that's a good idea. So I went from blogs to a manuscript about 3 years ago. And I found a wonderful creative person named Tim who came up with the concept of KABOOMER in the idea of that extraness, taking steps two at a time instead of thinking about polypharmacy and 2 pills at a time. So it evolved. And the 7 main chapters, surprise, are the 7 elements of that physical bank account. There's an intro. It leads off. Many of us, you've had a Phoenix-like experience in your life that propelled you to do what you do. And sort of I did as well. I blew out my back. I was a runner, a big guy, but I was a pretty good runner. I had slow twitch muscles and a pretty good stamina. But I herniated my L5-S1 disc. I had religious pain. So on September 11th, here we're coming up to September 11th, 2020, but 19 years ago, I was kind of cringing in London, England, on September 11th, that Tuesday morning, when I heard a BBC announcer say the skyline of New York has changed forever. And what a tragic day, but what a wake-up call, how the world has changed. But in my own personal case, we rose from it. Our country rose from the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the crash out in Pennsylvania. We rose, as great countries do. But I kind of said, well, maybe I can be a phoenix like our country was. Maybe I could rise up, get over this herniated disc, and get past the middle-aged stressors and maybe a little too much body fat, and learn about myself, and then maybe I can learn about others. So learning about myself helped me acquire what I think is the corpus of knowledge to share, particularly if I hear it and you hear it as well, John. Sometimes it's great to be a mirror as a trainer. If I was a 20-something trainer talking to a grandfather, there might not be that credibility of the aches and pains and the recovery time and problems. Right. So there are obviously first principles like you and I have talked about: sleep, resistance training, great diet are for everybody, whether they're babies or grandparents. But I wanted to focus on 75 million people who have more time because many of them are not working. They're in the happiness. They're past the downer part of their 40s and 50s, where things are, the hassles of life are getting them. They may have enough money to eat organic, maybe buy good dark chocolate, which we know is very, very good for us, instead of Hershey bars, that kind of thing. So I compiled, over the years, a manuscript as kind of an almanac where, and I do quote Ben Franklin. Who doesn't quote Ben Franklin? What a great guy.
Right.
He talks about beer. He talks about, old fish not being a good friend. So I started as an almanac, and it evolved into a 9-chapter book with some appendices with, if people are kind of nerdy like me, they want to drill down into muscle science. I didn't know until this manuscript that muscle means little mice. Well, we want to make those mice a little thicker and a little longer, don't we? So I wish I had taken Latin and Greek, because I'd understand the crazy muscle nomenclature that we have, or some of the diseases that people face. But we do the best we can. So, Kaboomer, thriving and striving into your 90s. And I've learned that people like to read on digital devices. So there's an ebook version out, and last week an audio book. If you want to listen to Dave Frost for 8 hours of narration, there's an audiobook out as well.
Well, I personally am a big fan of audiobooks, so you can best believe I'll be getting a hold of it.
Well, I argue that it's well researched to make everything credible. Sometimes we see some of those ads you mentioned talk about crap out 21 pounds overnight. Well, right. Take this magic pill and bingo, you're looking like Jane Fonda or Hugh Jackman. But CRAAP, C-R-A-A-P, I really, really wanted to show current, relevant, authoritative, accurate, and published information to back up the science, which is so exciting and is changing. When you and I started our fitness careers, we heard terms like, well, why are you working so hard? You may only live 2 years, and you spent 2 years exercising. That equation is zero. We say, well, no, that doesn't feel right. Your quality of life is going to be better, number one. But now, with people's knowledge, and now there's these two scientists that have a bet that the average life expectancy, not average, but people could live 120 years with technology and treating their bodies like temples, as you mentioned. So we'll see if that happens. But as long as their ability to stay up with the younger people, what I call gym age, there are well-published studies from the Mayo Clinic and other authoritative sources that say, if you can do so many push-ups, sit, reach, test, how quickly you can walk a mile, you may find that you're not 67. You may find that because of your oxygen capacity, your body's 30. That's kind of cool. So that's new stuff coming. And we joked, and one of the Kelly guys that was in space for a year, he came back and they measured the shoe caps of his DNA, much longer. Of course, he lost a lot of body mass up in space. But if you want to grow your telomere, and we only have so many times those shoe caps slice off, if you want to live longer, you stretch them with exercise. So they slough off slower. It delays. There's another big word, senescence, which isn't interesting. Senescence is the same word as Senate. Not anything about our Senate.
That is interesting, though. That is very interesting, for sure. But I knew I have a very good friend when her mother passed away. God bless her. I think my friend she's 82 or 83 now. But when her mother passed away, and I knew her mother well, she was 113 years old. Now, up until she fell and broke her hip, She was up every day. She was active, all these different things. She was acting like somebody that was in her 80s, and she was over 100. As soon as she fell and broke her hip, she lost a lot of mobility. She couldn't exercise like she used to. And of course, it took the wind out of her sails, I'm sure, because I don't think she ever got back out of a wheelchair.
No.
But when you take all those things into consideration, you look at the effect that not moving had on her body and her life compared to when she was constantly moving. I mean, there were days that I swear this woman had more energy than me, and back then I was in my mid 40s, so it's like, wow. So yeah, absolutely, man, movement is key without a doubt.
And if I could not to talk family too much, because I don't know this wonderful lady, and now she's rest her soul. But she is a blue zoner. A guy named Dan Butner wrote a book, The Blue Zones, and he found 7 areas of the world where there's a very high prevalence of 100-year-old people, centenarians. And he started to look at what are the trends that help people live longer and live better. Purpose. I bet this wonderful lady had social interactions, and she had grandkids and great grandkids and maybe great grandkids that kept her cooking. So purpose is important. She had mobility. One of the things the Okinawans in the Blue Zone say is 2 things, actually, for that group. Always leave food on your plate. We grew up, there's people starving in India. Always eat what's on your plate, right?
Yeah,
now they say
there's would slap me in the head if I didn't eat all my food. That's just how she was. So, but you're right. You're right.
Being a little bit hungry. And the Okinawans argue that spending a lot of time on the ground, being grounded and getting up from the ground. You and I know that one of the great tests for longevity is being able to get up from the ground without using your hands. We did it as kids. So if you have the sit to rise test, you're probably going to live a long time. So I'll bet you a nickel that some of those Blue Zone things were in that lady that passed at 113. Oh,
I have no doubt. Now, I wonder, though, has that research now, I'm very curious, because a lot of the epidemiology that's out there, a lot of those studies, the stuff that fascinates me the most is the people that live in like Alaska, above the Arctic Circle, the Inuits, the Eskimos, stuff like that. From my understanding, and I can't cite any particular study, but I know that a lot of studies have been done on their life expectancy and the lack of disease that they suffer, and they attribute a lot of it to A, their diet, and B, the
healthy
fact that they're constantly moving. They're hunters and gatherers. That's what they do. So they're constantly on the move. They're up every day working because they need to survive. They have to eat.
Amen. And isn't it interesting that those small populations, when did some of them get clobbered? When the missionaries brought the Western world. But the healthy fat that they ate, their motion, and of course, sometimes the hunting didn't work, so they fasted. And we know that they're extraordinarily interesting and I think powerful arguments for everyone, if they can, managing their insulin and blood sugar, should try some degree of supervised intermittent fasting so that our bodies remember how to live off stored energy. And so I'm a morning workout person. You may be as well. I try not to do serious heavy duty exercise in a fasted condition, because if we don't watch it, we'll burn muscle. But I'll do a long, slow distance work on an empty stomach with water and black coffee to challenge that energy system, to remember in your liver and in those white fat cells, there's plenty of energy for us to tap.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now I'm kind of strange in the way I do things. There was a time for almost 3 years I was on a ketogenic protocol. And that worked well for me, but I'm also a type 2 diabetic. So believe it or not, I got to a point after a while where my blood sugars were still being elevated, even though I wasn't ingesting a whole lot of carbohydrates. And what was going on was, it was a matter of my hormones were getting a little out of balance. and the gluconeogenesis inside the body that creates the glucose from amino acids and stuff like that, it was actually working a little overtime when it didn't really need to. So that was keeping my blood sugars elevated. So recently I've shifted back to where I'm eating more of a bodybuilder style diet, where I'm eating 5 to 6 meals a day, ingesting anywhere from 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrates in each meal. It just depends on what my output's going to be for the day. If I know that I'm going to the gym and I'm just working out chest and arms, I won't ingest as many carbohydrates as I will if I'm going to do leg day. Those types of things. And this is all stuff that people, once they understand the process behind it all, people can come to these conclusions themselves and actually create something that they can work with on a regular basis. But the biggest problem is there's so much, and you touched on this earlier, Dave, there's so much misinformation out there. For every true article and study that you can find on PubMed, you'll find 5 more. If you look down at the bottom and you see who sponsored those studies, a lot of times it's big sugar companies, Procter & Gamble, General Mills and stuff like that. Funded a lot of the studies that were utilized after Dr. Ansel Keys released his whole thing about saturated fat being the devil. Well, all these studies that followed that were all being funded by the cereal companies because they wanted people eating heart-healthy greens, and they wanted kids eating sugary cereal because they were making more money. You have to look
Tony
at what's
the Tiger
the
said
science. Yes.
Right.
Tony the Tiger said they're great, and Tony the Tiger turned half. Tony the Tiger, I don't want to say that because I'll probably get in trouble, but I will say that Tony the Tiger and people like Tony the Tiger, characters like Tony the Tiger, contributed to the fact that we have so many obese children nowadays. It's pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic. And here's the thing, Dave, kids that grow up not taking care of themselves raise kids that don't take care of themselves. And after they raise their kids, they become older people that are suffering from all different types of metabolic syndrome issues and all these other things, stuff that you deal with the clients and the people that you help on a regular basis, because they all came from that whole society of don't eat fat, don't concentrate on eating a bunch of meat, eat all your grains, eat all these vegetables and all this. And I'm not saying vegetables are bad, and I'm not saying that all grains are bad. I'm saying it should not be the staple of our diet.
Amen. And again, each person has that different chemical constitution. I've read, and I believe that about 1/3 of our ability to process energy that we intake comes from our parents. We have the right magical razor's edge combinations to handle things like macros, micros, or don't we? My family did a study, and I forget the 4-letter definition of the location of the DNA. It's called a series of fat genes. And it just means that your body's in a survival mode. It's going to store fat, which we know is good if you're in the North Pole and can't find the next dinner. But it's not good if you're a first grader trying to homeschool eating Cheetos. That's not good.
Yes. No. Some people have to, and you have to stop and think, because sometimes kids, like a prime example is my granddaughter. I was extremely concerned with her weight here back about 2 years ago. She was just a little butterball, and I think when she was at the peak of it all, she was like 9 getting ready to turn 10. Well, over the course of the year of her going between 10 and 11, she thinned down, shot up, the whole works, and bless her heart, she's relatively thin now, and she's healthy. But people need to pay attention to those times when they're not, because sometimes it is just quote unquote, well, you can remember it used to be called baby fat all the time. Oh, he's just baby fat. He'll grow out of that. You know what I mean? But the fact of the matter is, sometimes that's not the case. I mean, when you look at the fact that 30 years ago, type 2 diabetes wasn't called type 2 diabetes. It was called adult onset diabetes. And it came on because as we got older and got more busier and our lives got more hectic, we didn't spend enough time being active and exercising. So we would pick up weight, create insulin resistance, and then, we would have problems with our blood sugar. But now, because kids are getting it, because of the way society has become with just letting kids play video games and eat whatever they want, because if they're doing that, we don't have to deal with them. Now you have type 2 diabetes. And the last time I checked the stats, out of the 280 million people that have type 2 diabetes, 13 million of them are children. And that's just in the United States.
Houston, America, we have a problem. This is not
yes.
right, and much of it is controllable. I argue. I know that some folks just have it. They cannot handle their insulin sensitivity. Will never be there without a boost. Yet I've never read that motion makes it worse. If you monitor and if motion, I have not found a study that says it's counterindicated for diabetics. Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, MS. You have to be careful. You have to, in some cases, supervise. But my goodness, move, folks, move. And you mentioned metabolic syndrome, John. I have my layman's definition. I read that people who have good blood and tissue concentrations of vitamins like C and D, with good immunity, and they're leaner, and they don't have metabolic syndrome or diabetes, if they get COVID, they probably have a higher chance of living through it without ventilators, without awful afters. I believe that there are subjective, well, I know they're subjective, but I believe there to be emerging objective tests that if your immunity is down, and what are the things that help with immunity? Sunlight, exercise, sleep, humor, laughing.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Laughing helps to reduce stress. That's another thing. And I want to touch on that for just a second. Then I have another question that I want to ask you. People are starting to now, but for years they have not grasped the concept of just how devastating stress can be in the body. They don't understand the way it manipulates our hormones and our metabolism and all these things. It's just insane what it does. And I have found certain things, like literally, you probably won't believe this, and full disclosure to anybody that's listening to this, anytime I'm doing a podcast, I actually have binaural beats playing in the background. I can hear them in my headphones. Because binaural beats have been proven to the frequencies and whatnot they've used, they've proved to relax people on a subconscious level, which helps to reduce their stress. So I literally, anytime I'm sitting here doing anything at my desk, I have my earphones in and I have binaural beats playing in the background. I have stuff like incense burning, so I can, or essential oils. Reducing stress is critical, and the older you get, the more important it is. And you're right. Movement will do that. Spending time laughing, spending time with friends. I actually read a study that was done over in India where they said that if you spend 15 minutes a day bonding with a pet, it will reduce your stress by 40%. So by sitting down to watch a half-hour show on TV and let your dog climb up in your lap and just sit there and pet them, or your cat sitting on your lap and pet them, that can reduce your stress by up to 40%.
We are social. We're not fungi.
Yes.
We're not trees up on a bristlecone pine up on a mountaintop. We thrive. And isn't it interesting? It was on a show, but I had read about oxytocin, not OxyContin, but oxytocin, the hugging hormone. And even if you hug yourself or imagine in your mind's eye thinking about hugging, you're going to have a happy hormone, oxytocin, flooding your system to feel good and counteract the drip of the bad decay of cortisol. So we don't we don't want that endocrine system to be working overtime for stressful reasons, unless you're running from the saber-toothed tiger. Or
right, yeah. Then we want that sucker working overtime for sure. Absolutely. Okay, so now let me ask you. One of the things that I had read in some of your bio information was that you use this phrase called "from taking pills to taking steps," and it's all about how to build a beginner exercise program for somebody that's age 60 or older that maybe has never even exercised. So why don't you touch on that a little bit for us?
Sure, and I would ask to think history. What did your grandparents do when they were maybe farming, or even if they were industrial revolution? What did they do to stay active? And how did they survive with maybe 1,000 less calories a day, kilocalories, than we do now? That just astounds me that we are eating a pound a week, even if it's good food. We're eating a pound a week of potential energy more than we did when people lived, our parents and grandparents in the greatest generation. So taking steps two at a time. When maybe you got some arthritis and maybe you broke a hip and the doctor said, or maybe you had a cardio issue. Isn't it interesting that after folks have cardio problems, perhaps a scare from a heart attack, what do the doctors recommend? Motion, stamina for staying alive. So there's something there. And let's say we have a silver sneaker. Now, my Medicare plan, full and open disclosure, I am Medicare age. I am not able to, thank you very much, have silver sneakers. But if people look up silver sneakers on Dr. Google, you will find extraordinarily progressive, starting with basics. Get up from a chair, tuck your tummy against your backbone, give yourself a hug, grab a can of peas and do bicep curls. You can start easy. You should start easy. You should get the doctor's approval, of course. We all make sure that our clients of any age are doctor cleared, but over the age of 60, we place particular emphasis for being ready for physical exertion. Part Q is the form, physical aptitude readiness questionnaire. And over the age of 69, actually getting a doctor's signature that says, yes, you will benefit from heart rate raising without keeling over and dropping dead on my watch. So the main thing is just do it. It doesn't matter what it is. Be careful how you pick up the grandkid. Use your legs, not your back, but just move. Just half squats. But I had a wonderful client, a medical doctor, a family practice guy, who said one of the most amazing things he would do is have his patients sit down and watch how they get up from a chair. Do they look like Artie Johnson on Laughing, where you lean forward to get balance, or do you drive up with the big muscles, your quads and your glutes, to rise up and feel proud? So skeletal muscles are called skeletal muscles for a reason. And if we don't work them, they do turn into little mice. We want them to be bigger and stronger mice. And so the answer is, some people may, take a walk. There's nothing wrong with a walk, especially for the ladies with the issue of their calcium density and osteoporosis tends to be, poor ladies, they give birth to knuckleheads like me, and then they have more prevalence for brittle or bones. So walking is extraordinarily important. To be grounded as well. If you can, walk barefoot. That's another way to reduce stress. But again, it just comes back to motion. Supervised motion if you need it. No matter what your physical ailment is, there may be someone who cannot benefit from exercise, but I haven't found that him or her. Just being excited about living, laughing, moving. And again, if you can think about being younger in fitness age or gym age than your calendar years, God bless you. That's what I want to see, is people that, I don't feel 70. I feel 62. Awesome.
Exactly. And when you get that from someone, especially if you've played some sort of part in that, if you've helped them in one way, shape, or form, it's just that much more. It's like I find it amazing. I go to the gym, and I'm a weightlifter. That is my preferred form of exercise. I do cardio. I'll go in the gym and I'll, walk on a treadmill, or I'll ride the bike or whatever. Or, if the weather permits up here in the mountains, I'll grab a mountain bike and I'll go for a ride or something like that. But my preferred, what works best for me and my body is resistance training, lifting weights. And it's so funny because most days when I go into the gym, I'm like out working guys that are half my age. So it's like at 53 years old, I'm seeing 25-year-old guys that are huffing and puffing and taking 3-minute rest periods in between sets. And I'm resting 30 seconds and going back out a 300-pound deadlift. You know what I'm saying? Because it's what works for me. But I can't describe how it makes me feel. I have had times where I couldn't go to the gym. I had a full knee replacement last year. Spent a number of months out of the gym. And, going back, it's just like the feeling that I get when I'm there. It's everything for me. It's my stress relief. If I'm frustrated or aggravated about something, I can go in there and take it out on them weights because they're not going to talk back and I'm not going to hurt them. You know what I mean? It's just amazing how all that stuff works. So now let me ask you. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just going to share that, and there are medical studies from Johns Hopkins. If you, older people like me, if we do full body, some do upper and lower body and can do it more times a week. Right. People my age take 2 days of rest. You can probably get by on 1 day of rest. We want to get sore. If we don't get sore, we're not going to tear down to build up. That's the good cytokine. That's not a storm. That's the right cytokine. That's not a COVID cytokine. That's what our bodies do to tear down to build up. So we need to get sore. We need to move to sweat. And the other part is these Johns Hopkins guys say resistance training is one of the best things any of us can do in some modified way if somebody has a modification required, and laugh. 30 minutes of weight training and 15 minutes of laughing a day, even if your jokes suck like mine do, it's good for you. Right. It's good for you.
Yeah. And more times than not, the laughter portion of my day comes from when I'm doing podcasts like this, because I have been very fortunate in having people on that I could relate to in some way, shape, or form. We had things in common, and there's finding that commonality. And the biggest thing that I find is the joy in helping others. And when I can connect with somebody on that level, that they enjoy that just as much as I do, then sitting around and laughing and talking. I've had times where I've literally talked to somebody for 2 hours, and I like to keep my podcasts under an hour. So I had to go back and edit a bunch of stuff out so I could keep my podcast under an hour. And I probably could have sat there and talked to that lady for another hour and a half, easy. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There are so many, everything that we do in life affects us, whether negative or positive. Okay. The energy that we put out into the universe is going to come back to us at some point in some shape or form. So if we live in negativity, odds are we will have negative things come upon us. If we live in positivity, if we look at, hey, let me get up and move around, let me do this, let me do that, because it's going to improve the quality of my life, then it makes everything so much better. I don't even know who said this, and this is a quote that I've probably used thousands of times talking to people, but it goes back to your point that you were just talking about, what we've been talking about throughout the podcast, moving, okay? If you don't do anything but get up off the couch, walk out your front door, walk around your house, come back inside and sit down. If that's all you do, you literally lapped everybody that's still sitting on the couch. You did more work than they did. It's just that simple. Grab that can of peas and curl it, when you're putting away groceries, if you have a pantry that has a bottom shelf, grab that bag and squat down and, kind of stay hunched over if you can and put those groceries away and then stand back up. Using all the major muscle groups in everything you do in everyday life. If you're just a little bit conscious about it, and you can apply those different things to your life, you're going to see a lot better results all the way around, for sure.
Amen. And how about breathing when you're doing those power lifts at the gym? Breathing is so important to improve your performance. counter
Absolutely.
stress,
Yep.
and be mindful. And don't get distracted. Just take a deep breath when you hear fake news, right?
Yeah, well, I don't see. I'm fortunate in the fact that I don't listen to much news, so because I have found it too stressful, especially nowadays. You know, it's for me. I guess it's everybody's got an opinion and everybody thinks they're right, which that's society in and of itself. But I tend to focus on stuff that I know is right. Okay, science proves that if you do some sort of exercise and if you eat proper nutrition, if you take care of your body's going to take care of you, and you're going to be around for a long time. Science proves that. There's no denying that. So that's the type of stuff that I focus on. All this other stuff, you know,
Noise.
it is. Yes, you're exactly right. It's noise. Do I pay attention to some of it, like the whole situation with COVID? Yeah, absolutely. COVID is an extremely bad thing. It is something to be taken serious. But when I look at it, when you take it like. You remember, we're old enough that we remember this. I know some people don't remember this in school, but you remember the transparencies and the overhead projectors that they used to show us in class, and they would put the transparencies on this thing and it would shine it up on the screen. If you took a transparency of COVID, what it does and how many people it's killed, and then let's take that same transparency of obesity and its causations, overlap them, you won't even be able to see what COVID has to offer. Not at all, because we have been misusing and mistreating our bodies for so long with improper exercise and improper nutrition that we've created a pandemic that's bigger than COVID ever thought of being.
Really. And cardiac, the number of deaths in America from cardiovascular problems, many of which can be offset by diet, exercise, rest, not stressing, is much higher. And number three, we acknowledge the unplanned deaths from COVID are tragic, you know, whether you talk about culling the herd or whatever, really tragic. And but what's number three? Cancer. 20% of cancer, I believe, is preventable. Diet and exercise.
Yes.
I had a doctor tell me that.
Go ahead.
No, sorry.
I was going to ask, have you seen some of the studies where they're using ketogenic or zero carb diets to treat cancer patients because they say that cancer cells feed primarily off of glucose. So if you starve the body of glucose, it slows down the progression of cancer. That is amazing.
And if we save lives, then hopefully those survivors will, you know, drink the Kool-Aid. Don't drink Kool-Aid. I'm sorry. Drink clean water.
Oh, don't drink. Yeah, drink water. Don't drink Kool-Aid, Dave. Don't drink Kool-Aid.
When you get the holy water that says, "Hey, I don't want that to happen again." You had a Phoenix. I had a Phoenix-like experience. When you rise from the ashes, make a difference, and maybe, like you share that difference with other people, so we have a better society. I mean, that's kind of missionary sounding, but we have an issue. There's a reason why we have 6 million people that have contracted COVID, and there's a reason why we have the highest number of deaths. We are a sedentary, diabetic, obese, affluent population. Let's get hungry.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We mistreat our body more than any other people in the world. The people in the United States mistreat their bodies, and because of that, we're the ones that are paying the price. So it's just that simple. You know, I could probably sit here and talk to you for a couple more hours, but we need to go ahead and wrap this thing up. So let me ask you, out of all the things that we've discussed so far, this is a question that I ask everybody that comes on my show. If you could do one thing that would affect health and fitness on a global level, and that could be not just necessarily for people over the age of 60, but just society in general, if you could do one thing, affect one policy, put one idea out in the world, what would it be?
You know, physical trainers, John, love to think that we make the difference with stretching, stability, stamina, strength. Very important, but I got to start with diet. 20% of cancers may be preventable with proper diet. If you eat well and you time your diets well, you're going to sleep better. If you eat clean, you're not going to get inflamed. You're not going to have a leaky gut. Here I am, a trainer, acting like a wannabe dietitian. I'm not a registered dietitian. I'd have to say, folks, do your best to eat clean. It may cost you a little more, but it's an investment in your livelihood. Eat clean, folks.
That is awesome. And that's, I couldn't be more in agreement with you, as a nutritionist and a trainer as well. I see so often the miracle that happens with people when they get the education they need and they have the knowledge to create a nutrition protocol that works for them, something that they can sustain, something that it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm on this diet and I'm on this diet for 12 more weeks. Nutrition protocols and building a sustainable life isn't about something that you start and stop. It's about creating habits that will let you lead a happier, healthier life. And what you just said, it just preaches right to that fact. And you're 100% spot on. Nutrition is key. Not saying that exercise and recovery and all that stuff isn't important, because it is, and it needs to be done right as well. All of those pieces of the puzzle need to be done correctly. But it's like the old saying goes: you can't out-train a bad diet. You can want to be a bodybuilder, and you can be working in the gym with Hanny Rambod, which is the most winningest Mr. Olympia coach ever. I think he's had like 19 different clients win Mr. Olympia in one way, shape, or form. This guy could be training you 7 days a week, but if you eat like crap, your physique's going to look like crap, your health's going to be crap, and nothing you do in the gym is going to pay off. It's all going to be for nothing. So, yes, you need to move, but you need to make sure that you're putting the right fuel in your body. You can't put gasoline in a diesel engine. Just that simple. For sure. All right, my friend. Yeah, exactly. Before we take off, let everybody know where they can reach out. I'm going to put stuff in the show notes, but why don't you let everybody know where they can contact you if they want to find your book, if they want to work with you in any way, shape, or form. Just let them know.
Well, online, we are, it's great to get out bare feet out in the lawn, but we are online a lot. And I'm at wellpast40.com. That's spelled out. And it's FORTY. Wellpast40.com is the website. I hope it's information rich with information for everybody to make those first steps to eat well, live long. My email is dave@wellpast40.com. And on Twitter, I'm DEFP Trainer. And Instagram is #KABOOMERCoach with K's. A little bit of
cool.
Fun there with that. But John, thank you so much. See, I knew your last name was a K, so I spelled
yeah, there you go. Maybe I should do that too. Just be Coach K. That would work. I could do that. Yeah, because you would be amazed how many times people look at my name and go, huh? How am I supposed to say that? I'm like, look, you think it's bad. You're trying to figure out how to say it. It took me 6 months to learn how to spell it when I was a kid. So I can only imagine what you're going through. All right, my friend, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I want to thank you for coming on the show. We went through a lot of struggles getting this all connected with internet connections and power outages and all kinds of good stuff. But this interview has been everything I thought it would be and more. And I sure do want to thank you for being on the show.
Thanks so much, John. Wonderful.
All right. I'm going to switch over and wrap things up, and then I'll be right back for some parting words.
All righty. Thank you, John.
All right, you guys. This has been an interesting one. Dave is amazing. Some of the stuff that he's done throughout his life, I love the fact that he works as a volunteer coach for helping soldiers that have been through and served our country rehabilitate themselves and things of that nature. I think that's absolutely fascinating. I love his outlook on, using movement as medicine, because when you get right down to brass tacks, that's exactly what it is, folks. It's the cheapest medicine that you can take. It doesn't cost you a damn thing. Just get up and move. Just that simple. All right, guys. I just lost my train of thought. Good thing I can edit this. Okay, so if you got value out of this video, and I know you did, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you smash that bell. Oh yeah, you got to select the all feature now for some reason. I don't know why YouTube did that. If you're going to subscribe to my channel, you want to know when all my videos drop. But it is what it is. So select the bell, hit the all feature, so that way you'll know when new episodes of the JAK'ed podcast drop, of the Flex Fuel Forum drop, and anything else that I decide to put on this YouTube channel. And until I see you guys again, you know my motto: playtime's over. It's time to go to work.